Hey fellow backyard boys, Nick here.
Don't let it slide off.
I'm out here at the Glass Buttes Knapp-In with a bunch of great people, and today I'm going to be building a boat with a fire. So I'm using a 3/4 inch Schedule 40 furniture grade pipe, and this one's blue. And you can do this with any type of PVC though. And we're aiming for about 35 to 40 pounds on this one. So I've gone ahead, marked it at 48 inches long, and then I've marked the center at 24 inches. The first thing I'm going to do is heat this limb up over the fire.
Got one down?
So the main trick to using a fire is just to keep it moving. You don't want to stop it in any one spot or you're going to burn it. And it also helps if you kind of start off near the tip and then kind of work your way in toward the center. And once this starts to droop, you'll see why that's important. So now you can see it's starting to droop a little bit. And as it does that, if you start too close to the handle, it's going to get harder to handle this. So it should be warm enough to where you can squish it with your fingers, but be sure to wear gloves because it's very hot. Once you've got that, you're going to take it back and put it in your jig. And I'm using inch tall spacers on this one. Set the board right at the middle and then press on it. And you need at least 150 pounds. So if you weigh less than 150 pounds, you can always carry some extra weights, or you can use a clamp for this. And then you just got to let it cool. So, let's see. Alright. So now, sight down. It's fairly straight, but wherever it's not straight, you just push against the curve and straighten it out. So there it is. Now I'm going to go ahead, put this back on the fire and heat up the other limb. Alright. Line it up on the jig, make sure it's straight, and then as you're pressing this, you want to make sure that the other limb is flat. Alright, so that should be good. Sight down the limb, make sure it's straight. This one looks pretty good. Alright. Now you want to wait until this cools completely. Normally you'd want to wait until this cools completely so you can see if both limbs are equal, but they look pretty good, so I'm just going to go ahead and start working on my tips. So the trick to doing this is when you're heating this up, make sure to concentrate heat on the flats. If you concentrate heat on the sides, it'll split. A little bit of splitting right at the tip's not going to affect this, but if it goes further than about 3/4 of an inch, then you're going to need to start over with a new pipe. So I'm going to heat up approximately 6 inches of the tip. So this is how I want it. Now what I'm going to do is turn my jig around and place the tip in between the boards to squish it. And while I'm doing this, I'm also putting a little bit of reflex or recurve into the tip. You want about 3 to 4 inches of recurve on the tip. I'm also pinching the very tip here to close it up. Okay, I think that's about done. Well, that might be a bad idea. Alright, so now that the rest of it's still a little warm, I'm just going to flex it, line it up. Looks good. Here's the tip. Now I'm going to go in and keep the other side and try to make it equal. Well, okay, so now I've got this heated up. I want to try and replicate that same angle. You can also use a vise or something similar if you have one on hand. And then you just press it and you just kind of eyeball it, try to make it fairly equal to the other side. Alright.
Is there any difference in the draw strength between that and regular PVC?
This, depending on the design, I usually get a little more weight than white. A lot more weight than gray. And though it kind of works out because this has slightly worse performance than white pipe. But if I compare, say, a 40-pound one of these to a 37-pound white pipe, they're about equal. And that's about the weight difference you get. So for the same dimensions, the performance is the same, but it's going to pull a little heavier.
Is that pipe just a little bit denser, stronger?
I'm not sure what it is. It's probably whatever they add to it. Another thing too is white pipe is not 100% PVC. Okay. So this looks pretty good. Lines up fairly decently. So now we're going to heat up the center and just kind of puff out the handle a little bit. And that will allow us to line this bow up as well. So let's see if I can center this over the fire. Okay, that's closer. Okay, so now I'm just going to kind of squish it sideways, just a little bit. Don't need to do a lot. Okay, now that I've done that, I want to make sure that the other side still has a good taper to it. Now sight down the bow, make sure everything lines up. If you've got any twist, you can twist the pipe, straighten it up. And then we're going to put just a little bit of reflex in the handle here, just a tiny bit. This will help so that once you've shot out this bow and it gets some set or some memory, you're not going to lose any performance. Looks pretty good. Now you just have to let it cool, then we can cut the nocks and string it up. Alright, now that the pipe is cooled, I'm going to go ahead and cut my nocks. But first, I'm going to cut these tabs off. Now if you lined up your vise, you could actually leave these and they would actually help guide the string. But I'm going to cut them off and round them off. So I've got a hacksaw, and I'm just going to cut this
the point.
Try not to overcut
Go
it.
look at some of this stuff. Right, see, that's artwork. I don't do art. I'm not, I'm a surprise.
Yes, please, show me.
To me, it's being able to pick up any shard here and point that I can
So
hook
you
it
need it
by
on
me.
the other
And that's my, when I started dreaming of being a mapper,
You have it tipped in this
you
way.
know, studying history and everything, I wanted to
Now I'm just going to take a saw, I mean not a saw, a file around the saw.
see, I have to keep 40 people in here. You got one?
Alright, now that I've cut and shaped the tip, I'm going to cut my knot. I'm using a tile saw,
Down there.
and I'm going to be going about
With an oversized
half an inch
load,
from the end.
15 feet high, so I had to go very carefully through the world. And I got down there and went up high speed and dropped it off up there. And no, not clear to the top. Reluctantly, go away. I'll be honest with you. I'd like to say, yeah,
And you want to cut just until you break this wall. Just until, not much further than that.
I would.
Because you want this to not slip out, but at the same time you don't want this to be a weak spot. And then you just want to go in and round out the edges.
This is called alternate placement. This is called a wall.
And I'm just going to clean this up with a file.
Like it's a wall.
To get rid of that, you gotta go on that edge.
I gotta put it back and forth. Right. Well,
Now I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing
this is the
to the other
platform
side.
right up there.
Now that the bow is finished, I'm going to make a temporary string out of paracord. Now this is poly paracord, which doesn't stretch like nylon paracord, so if you wanted to, you could use this as your finished string. And there's not a huge amount of performance difference between this and say a Dacron string, though there is some. So I'm just tying an overhand knot, place it in one knot,
Okay. So it's got the,
bring it down to the other side,
And that's what
measure about
you grip and you got weight.
3 to 4 inches or so.
This might be heavy.
Another knot,
We buy the
and
Yes.
electrodes from Grand Coup.
Okay, wow.
Burned out electrodes.
see, it's that little bridge thing, but if the edge is
In
too sharp,
Spokane, you have to be going through there. Yeah,
now
you
we'll
jump
bring
off
one side down,
Parade Thor North.
hop the string on the
Go
other
up over
side.
the railroad tracks there. The wrecking yard is right underneath you, so you get to the other end and you go around and underneath, and you go in there and tell them what they scrap copper, and they'll take you out and just amaze
pushing that flake out. The recycling?
you. Yeah, and they've got to have it in lots of things.
There it is. So as you can see, it came out pretty balanced. I would say this is your top limb. And
Let's go down each other's thrones here.
there it is.